Before we do the ghusl, let me just go over the things that that you shouldn't do if you're not in wudu. So you can't pray. You can make du'a, but you can't pray. And if we'll do the section on tayammum, but if you don't have tayammum or water, then the prayer is it's not binding on you, according to the Malikis. So they give the example of somebody who's in jail, who's like locked up on the wall with chains or something. They can't do wudu. So you can't do a tawaf because tahara is a condition. It's a shart li sahhat al-tawaf. It's necessary but not sufficient condition. The sa'i, on the other hand, if you're making sa'i, you can do it without wudu. But the tawaf, you have to be in wudu, and that he covers that in the section on the. Also, what's that? Well, for the same reasons that you had, you can. Yeah, for the same reasons that you would do wudu. And then also you should not touch the mushaf. And that includes even a portion of it or a verse. And it includes also the fatay and mushaf, or if the mushaf is in something, you shouldn't touch it without wudu. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. Only people in a state of tahara should touch it. If the mushaf has tafsir in it, it's permissible. So like Yusuf Ali, English that has the Arabic, it's permissible to touch it. It's also permissible if it's being transported. So, for instance, if it's in a trunk, even a non-Muslim could carry it in that case. There's rules relating to the mushaf. You shouldn't carry it into any, like a toilet or something, unless it's covered. So if you had like a jacket that has a zipper, then you could take the mushaf into a bathroom. Or it was in like a briefcase or a purse, if the purse had a zipper or something covered. But it can't be open to the air in the same place that... Yeah, you should do wudu. You shouldn't touch it. The mushaf is... it has a hurma. Sanctity is very high. And also, it is prohibited for somebody who's, in a state of hadath al-asghar, the lesser or the greater, they should not write the Quran or even a verse of it. And then that includes also... if, like I said, if the mushaf was with some things that were being moved, then it's permissible to move it. So if it was with, if you're moving some things and it's one of those things, then it's permissible to move. But if it's the mushaf on its own, it's not. Yeah, you shouldn't write a verse of Quran. Yeah, the electronic media is a problem. I mean, I asked Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayy about that. You should treat a mushaf that's on CDs or something, you should treat it with respect, because on the one hand you could do a qiyas that it's like somebody who memorizes the Quran, so because it's ready at hand, it's actually not present. So on the CDs, it's digitally there, but it's actually not. There's no physical evidence of it being there, other than that once it starts playing. But I mean, those are codes, and words are codes as well. It's just those codes aren't, they're not the mushaf technically of what we have. I mean, it's a problem, It's definitely, so it's usually better to err on the side of caution and just treat it. I mean, I had teachers that treated the CDs like a mushaf. Yeah, no, exactly. Now we've got MP3. I mean, I've got the whole Quran on my iPhone, So that's what I mean. But it's not, it's ready at hand. Do you know what I mean? You have to pull it up. So it's encrypted. Well, it's like a qari is somebody who's ready at hand. I mean, it's like if you ask him for an ayah, he'll give you the ayah. Well, it's similar to, to the, so the qari can go into the bathroom and, he doesn't, he has to do what he has to do as well. So the Quran being in the heart is not like the mushaf. The mushaf is a physical, do you see what I mean? So in that way, there's a physicality, but then there's a non-physicality because it's really, it's not right there, but it's ready at hand. You can pull it up. So in that way, it's similar to like memorization. I mean, it's definitely a new thing. I Shaykh Abdullah, he wasn't, he just said it's better to respect it than not to, than to consider it normal. Well, that's what I said, and he liked that analogy because I use that as an analogy that, and he thought that was an interesting way to look at it. But it's definitely encrypted in there. I mean, it's encrypted, so there is a physical reality to it on those things. But one could argue that it's encrypted in the Hafiz as well, because that memory is, there is memory. Like when you memorize something, you're actually creating neural pathways, and the neural pathways are there. So I mean, you can forget things, but the actual neural pathways it's like a file it's deep down in your filing cabinet. It's not that it's not there, it's just you don't have the access that you used to have, or it's lost in those files. It's somewhere, I just don't know where it is. So,
Would you say that, for example, if someone's menstruating and it's okay to read Quran off of the computer?
well, the Malikis, a menstruating woman can read the Quran. Yeah, it's not. Imam Malik's the only imam from the four that was his position. And his argument was that hayd you can't use the analogy of janaba, because janaba is something that people can remove at will if they have water. And if they don't have water, they can remove it with tayammum. So, whereas a woman in hayd, he argued that technically she could be prevented from reading the Quran half of her life, her adult life, because her hayd could be 15 days. So he said that a menstruating woman can recite Quran. Well, I mean, the dafa is, it's better to do it on a kursi, and it's better to use, to get, khuruj an al-khilaf mustahab. To get out of differences of opinion is an encouraged thing. So because there's a prohibition with the other imams, it's better to use like a Yusuf Ali that has commentary, or Jalalain, to use something that has commentary. And now they have nice, they have sectioned Qurans with commentary on the side, and it's like a mushaf. So that's what I would do. If you're maintaining your Quran, then it's permitted for you to read from the mushaf. when you're in menstrual cycle. Yeah.
I just want to clarify. Let's say like a young child is trying to memorize like Juz Amma and it has just the Juz Amma pamphlet.
Yeah, they can recite without wudu like children when they're learning the Quran, and they can hold it as well. Not the mushaf.
Just like that one Juz.
Like the lawh or a portion, exactly. Yeah, they're permitted to do that. So, a menstruating or a woman who's got lochial bleeding can do that also. If they're learning, like and that's the important, the difference. If she's maintaining her hifz or she's learning the Quran, then she can touch it. Okay. And then also, as if it has tafsir, then there's no prohibition because it's not considered a mushaf, it's considered a tafsir. And that includes somebody who's in the state of janaba. They can carry a tafsir as well. So the section on ghusl, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ جُنُبًا فَطَّهَّرُوا. If you're in a state of janaba, then purify yourselves. A state of janaba is the hadath al-akbar, which comes from the iltiqa, the meeting of the two circumcised. I mean, the Arabs call, they say the two circumcised, but they really mean the male, because the Arabs call when there's two things that are together, then يغلب على أحدهما, they use the name. So you have like al-ma wa tamar is called al-aswadan. Water and dates are called the two aswadan, the two black things, but it's really the dates that are black. In the Maliki madhab, circumcision of a woman is not, some of the Maliki say it's makruma. Imam Sidi Ahmed Zarruq said Moroccan women, they didn't do it in Morocco, and he said it wasn't necessary. So it's kind of a khilaf issue, but it's definitely not a clitorectomy. I mean that has nothing to do with Islam. That's like they actually call that pharaonic circumcision. So it was a pre-Islamic thing that Coptic Christians did, and you find it in Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, some of those places where you get what's called a pharaonic circumcision, which is not the makruma was something that the Prophet ﷺ permitted for the Arabs, because the Arabs used to do it before Islam, and they came and they asked him, and he said, you can do it, but don't just make a cut, don't. So it's like it was a little cut that they made on a woman, and some say it comes from Sarah, that when Ismail was given, when Ibrahim alayhi salam was given the circumcision, she asked for something for the women, and Ibrahim was given the earrings, like the piercing the ears, and then Sarah. Yeah, but Ibrahim was revealed to him to tell her to pierce the ears, and so the ghusl is, ghusl in the Arabic language means washing. So it's used for maghsala is the washing machine. Ghasl is to wash. The ghusl specifically, as a technical term, is to wash the entire body with the intention of making the prayer permissible with rubbing. So that's the definition. The entire body, which means all of the skin. So down to in the hair, you go all the way down. And it can be wajib, it can be sunnah, or it can be mandub. So you can take a ghusl, even if you don't need one. You need a ghusl from janaba, which is to be in a state of ritual impurity as a result of the meeting of the glands, which is the tip of the male organ, meets the labial folds. So there's some level of penetration, even if it's a small amount. But if the glands goes into the labial folds, then both of the people need ghusl. So it's not simply an orgasm, or there has to be penetration at some level. And then it's also for a woman who's in menstruation. And menstruation, technically, even though menstruation, hayd in Arabic is not, in fiqh, it's not exactly menstruation, because there are certain types of hayd that are not considered menstruation by medical science, but they're considered menstruation by, like a pregnant woman can have hayd according to in the books of fiqh, whereas obviously in a Western sense they can't. So hayd is generally menstruation, but not completely. And there's in Maliki madhab, when you get into spotting, I'm going to do a section on menstruation. So let me go through this now. And then the nufasa is the blood of lochial bleeding, which happens after pregnancy. If a woman gives birth and she bleeds up to 40 days, she can bleed, and that blood prevents prayer. So those are the things that you make the ghusl. It's a sunnah on the day of Jumu'ah, on the Eidain, on the Ihram for the Hajj, or for the Umrah, and also to wash a dead person. And some of them say that it's actually an obligation. So that's the mashhur of the madhab, is that it's an obligation to wash the dead person. And then it's mustahab for tawaf, for sa'i between Safa and Marwa, for being at Arafah, Muzdalifah, and then washing from the blood of istihada, because even though istihada is blood that 3 days after your normal cycle, you call that istihada, which it's like is it menorrhea? Menorrhea? Istihada? Menorrhea. I mean, menorrhea is the blood that just flows, right? Yeah. It's menorrhea. So if you have menorrhea, which is women who bleed excessively, even after they've had their menstrual bleeding, and it's usually from there's veins in the actual womb that bleed, because it can be treated through cauterization. They go up and they treat it. So there are women that have this medical problem, but now you can treat it. But obviously in these days you couldn't treat them. So women that bleed. If your normal cycle is 5 days, then when you get to 8 days, it becomes istihada. So that means that the blood that flows after that is not considered menstrual blood. So you resume praying. You do ghusl and resume praying. You can have sexual intercourse. It's normal. So it's encouraged then when the istihada stops to do ghusl. You don't have to, because it's not technically hayd, menstruation. And then also to go into Mecca and Medina, all of those things. Some of the ulama, if you're visiting one of the righteous people, would do ghusl, just to visit one of the awliya or the salihin, to go into their gathering. And then the obligations of ghusl are, you have to have an intention at the outset. So again, it's niyyah. And part of the, in the deen, so much of our religion is based, إِنَّمَا الْعَمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So it's really becoming present to intentionality. If you look, most people in the world don't really do things with intention. Like, if you ask people, why are you doing this? they have loose understandings of why they do things. I mean, people, do things for reasons. But the intention in the deen is so strong. It's such a strong element. Ibn al-Hajj, al-Abdari, who wrote a book called Al-Madkhal, from indication from one of his teachers, Ibn Abi Jamrah, he wrote a 4-volume book, and he did it because his sheikh said that he was saddened by the fact that so many people lost opportunities in their lives because of the absence of intention in their actions. And he said he wished somebody would write a book about rectifying the intentions. And then he looked at Ibn al-Hajj, and Ibn al-Hajj said he realized he was kind of telling him he should write the book. So he wrote that book, and it's an amazing book because it's basically every profession he deals with and shows how their profession can be a means to actually gaining reward with Allah. Doesn't matter what they're doing. There's a Adam Smith argued that that the butcher is really selfish. That's why he's become a butcher to make money. But he said his selfishness benefits the rest of us because he's making money off a social service. So even though he's doing it for selfish reasons, it benefits everybody. Ibn al-Hajj is the exact opposite. He's saying the butcher has an opportunity to be doing his work as an act of worship for God by making his intention to provide halal meat for the Muslims so that they can get energy so that they can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he actually shows how just your job that is an ordinary job can actually become an opportunity to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why intention is so central to our religion. And so in the ghusl, the intention is, Ibn Arabi said about the sexual act, he said that it was on the one hand, he said it was actually a spiritual, I mean, he saw it as a very spiritual thing because he said it was that desire for unity, like the desire for the opposites to come together, the Jamal and the Jalal, which are the two ways in which Allah reveals himself to the creation. So he saw it as this desire for these two theophanies of God in the world to come together and to unite. But he also saw it as this ultimate state of forgetfulness, so that that people go into such forgetfulness that the ghusl is a way of bringing them back. Because Allah is ghayur. So there was so much pleasure found in other than God, in the mate, that the ghusl was a way of restoring that presence. That's the way, that's the ishara, but that's the way he looked at it. So doing the ghusl, it's a sunnah to do it after the intercourse. If you do not do it, you should at least clean from the the najasa, and then do wudu. You can do wudu. It's not a wudu la yarfa'u al-hadath. It doesn't remove the hadath, but it's a wudu that the angels of mercy remove themselves from people that are in a state of janaba, and so it's a way of so you just do a wudu before you go to sleep, but you should do something instead of just having the intercourse and then sleeping. It's better to to have some type of washing. And then the famous story of Abu Huraira, who once was in a state of janaba, and it was from seminal emission in sleep because he wasn't married at the time, but he saw the Prophet and then he hid, because he was ashamed, and the Prophet noticed that he hid behind a wall. So he saw him later. He said, "Well, what were you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I was in a state of najaba. I felt ashamed." And he said, "Al-mu'min la yajnub." The mu'min doesn't. It's in other words, like your spiritual state is still purity. Like a believer doesn't go into a state of impurity. His. It's called Al-Madkhal of Ibn al-Hajj. It's an amazing book. When I've spent like a couple years just reading that book all the time. It's one of my favorite books. But he just covers everything. I mean, he's like street sweepers. You know, they intend to keep the streets clean of impurities so that people don't get their clothes soiled by impurities. The bookbinder intends to preserve knowledge, and I mean, he just shows how everything can be made an act of devotion to God. And historically, that's the way. Like if you go into Fez, in those old. Titus Burckhardt, in his book on Fez, the sacred city, when he was there, because he was there in 1932, you know, he mentions how people really had that understanding, because he would talk to craftspeople. He once was talking to a man who was making a comb, one of the horn combs from horn, you know, from the animal horn, and he was making the comb, and he asked him about it, and he said, he asked him what he thought of the new combs that they make. He said he didn't like them. And he said, why? And he said, this was taught to us by Idris, the prophet Idris. He was the first one to make a comb and give it to the people. And he said, and I learned this. I learned how to make this from my teacher, who learned it from his teacher, who learned it all the way back. And he said, to take that out, you know, to take that from, because that's tradition. I mean, tradition extends even to crafts. And he said now they just make all these things, and he said people won't appreciate it. He said people, when they buy my comb, he said they keep it for their whole lives, and they actually appreciate it. And that's one of the really interesting things also about the Prophet ﷺ, is that he named things. You know, stuff. Like now, stuff is all disposable, and when you appreciate stuff, you're going to appreciate people. But when you have a total lack of appreciation for stuff, the next thing is to have a total lack of appreciation for people, because people become utilitarian. You know, like stuff, you use people. So this idea, the Prophet ﷺ named things, like he named his comb. He had a comb, like, where's so-and-so? And he was personalizing stuff. And even though he had very few things, he honored them by naming them. Now it's all throwaway. Everything's throwaway. And people don't appreciate the world itself, that the world has value. Things in the world, stuff has value, books have value. You know, somebody asked Sidi Abdullah ibn Hajj Ibrahim, one of the great scholars of West Africa, he said, you know, how did he get such a big opening? He said, well, one thing, I have never put knowledge on my calf. You know, just like he never put a book at that level. You know, just the adab towards knowledge, the adab towards books. I mean, now it's all thrown away. You know, people use things and. You know, if in Syria, putting a book on the ground, you get whipped almost by the teacher. I mean, I always marvel, like, when I was at the university, I would see kids sitting on their books. Do you know? I mean, if you did that in a madrasa, they would just really, I don't know what they would do. You know, the idea of sitting on knowledge like that. But, you know, in West Africa, they're looser about that just because they're floor people. So I think it depends on, like, I'm a floor person. I don't really have furniture in the house, so we're on the floor. So for me, having a book on the floor is not, it's not like a, because I read and my books are on the floor. But if you're in a culture of, you know, table people, then you shouldn't put books on the floor. So I think it goes with the urf. Because my teachers, like in West Africa, did not have a problem putting a book on the floor, but they're floor people. Obviously, the mushaf, I wouldn't do that. And that's why, you know, they have the kursi traditionally to hold the mushaf. That was for floor culture. So you always kept the mushaf off the floor. So I think it goes under urf, like it would be the custom of a people. What's proper adab with this? So if you're in a culture with all furniture and you have a book on the floor, it's aib. So the removal of state of greater ritual impurity, fulfillment of an obligation, in other words, to fulfill the fard, or rendering worship permissible, istibaha. These are just different ways that you can that you bring to mind your intention at the time that you're doing the ghusl. And then obviously muwalat, the continuity, the fawr, rubbing the entire body with water, penetrating all of the body's hair. So getting down into, so that the hair actually goes down to the, and that would include for a woman, if she's got braids, removing the braids so that she can penetrate down to the hair. And then making sure to reach all the hidden places like the inguinal folds and between the buttocks, the creases of the knees under the armpits, the folds of the inner thighs, between the buttocks, and inside the navel if you have an innie as opposed to an outie. And then washing what is difficult to reach with a towel or something similar. So for heavy people, people that can't reach their back, or there's people that don't have that flexibility, they can use a towel. If it's if it's really difficult, they can actually, somebody else can help them do that. And then some of the additions that Sidi Khalil mentioned is just washing and rubbing between the toes. That's an obligation, which is the sunan of ghusl. Are rinsing the mouth, wash the hands at the outset, lightly sniff water into the nostrils and blowing it out, and then wipe the outer canals of both ears. So you don't go into the inner canal, but you take water and you put it there so that the whole, and then you wipe inside and just get the outer canal. So you don't try to go into the ear. And then washing it. Then the mandubat are begin by washing off all the impurities. So the najasa that came from, the semen and the rutubat al-farj, like the discharge from the woman, you wash that from the thighs or wherever it is, and then saying Bismillah, washing the head 3 times. Commence with the parts washed in wudu with the exception of the feet. You wait for the feet to the last, but you do the parts of the wudu. Conserve water. The Prophet used a sa'a, which is 4 amdad. So the mud is half a liter. All right, so the Prophet could do ghusl then with 2 liters of water, which is not a lot of water. So again, water conservation is good. I mean, people take showers in our culture for to take, just the enjoyment of taking a shower. So, but a lot of water is wasted. Begin from the top down. Wash the right side first. Begin by cleaning the genitals, and avoid touching the genitals thereafter with the inside or the sides of the palms and the fingers. If one happens to touch the genitals, or if anything occurs that nullifies wudu later on in the ghusl, then repeat what had already been completed of wudu. Or repeat the entire wudu if one touches the genitals after completing the wudu, and then return to the ghusl. So if you break the wudu during the ghusl, then you do the wudu, or do just what part of the wudu that you had done before. And then Khalil says, and begin washing the head from the forehead, which is the same as in wudu as well. So ghusl is required after. So, the Prophet ﷺ took a ghusl with a pitcher of water in a tub, and he also took ghusl with Aisha radiallahu anha. So you can take a ghusl with your spouse. Aisha said, the Prophet never saw my genitals, I never saw his genitals. And that's adab, that's not for normal, that's permissible to look at the genitals of your spouse. But the Prophet ﷺ, out of the adab, the intense adab and haya, Aisha said that about him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But they did take ghusl together, so it is permissible to do that. And they did not have showers, so this was a washing. and which, you know, I mean, where I lived in most places when I was in the Muslim world, there weren't showers. So, but it's similar. And then you wash, you know, you begin by washing your private parts, cleaning that area, do the wudu, except for the feet. Wash the head, make sure that the water penetrates down, and then the ears, you know, the neck all around, and then like the back, so getting your back so that you make sure you rub, because delk, you have to have delk on all parts of your body, and then go down the right side, and then the left side, and then that's the ghusl, and then doing the same, you know, once you leave, if you're in a bathroom, then you can do the shahada when you get outside of the bathroom. If you're in an area where the shower is separate from the bathroom, then you can say, do the dhikr in that. So ghusl is required after menstruation, postpartum bleeding, orgasm in which fluid is ejaculated. So that includes a wet dream, it includes masturbation, anything that you have seminal emission. And then the penetration of the glans penis in any private part. So that includes you know, rectal, which is absolutely prohibited. Male, female, male, animal as well, any bestiality, anything. But, you know, people do these things. That's why they mention them in the books of fiqh. And then also entering Islam in the state of one of the previous four. So when you become Muslim, you take a ghusl, one of the first things that you do, and then learn about najasa, tahara, so which is important. And then the physical state requiring ghusl, janaba, prohibits the following. If it is caused because of menstruation or postpartum bleeding, then intercourse is unlawful until ghusl is performed. The Prophet ﷺ used to go to his wife when she was in menstruation, and she would wrap an izar, and he would not go under the izar, but he would dally with her. So it's permissible to have you know, foreplay and intimacy, but it is prohibited to have intercourse during that time. What's called mufakhadha is also permissible, which is you know, like a you know, the thighs of a woman, something like that. Those things are permissible, but actual genital penetration is prohibited during the time that she is in her menstrual cycle. And then if it is from the last 2 points, 3 and 4, in the previous section, then the recitation of the Quran is unlawful with the exception of a few ayah recited for protection, like isti'adah. So if it's from the postpartum bleeding, if it's from orgasm or penetration of the glands, then you cannot do any recitation of Quran unless it was like to do isti'adah or something, seeking refuge in Allah, Ayatul Kursi or the 3 quls. All 4 prohibit one from entering a masjid. So if you're in a state of janaba, you cannot go into a masjid. Additions from Khalil, the prayer, touching the Mus'haf of the Quran, circumambulating the Kaaba, making tawaf. If something is forgotten during the ghusl, then treat it as if you would your wudu, except what you need not repeat what was already performed. So you just go back to that limb or whatever you forgot. And then Sidi Khalil mentions on the clarification on the different types of doubt. If there's doubt in regard to a discharge, whether it is many or medhi, so if you don't know, if you wake up and you have discharge and you don't know if it's many or medhi, you assume it's many. So you do a ghusl for that. Also, you don't have to do a ghusl for discharge, for ejaculation that comes from some kind of, it doesn't relate to the normal means. So, I mean, they mention in the books of fiqh like riding a horse or riding a camel or something like that. Sometimes that will cause an ejaculation. That just means they have to wipe, clean themselves, but it's not, doesn't necessitate ghusl. If it's urine or medhi, then consider it medhi. If it's many, medhi, or urine, consider it medhi. So order of ghusl. When performing ghusl, one should follow this order. Start by saying Bismillah, If you're in a pure place. So if you're in the bathroom, then you should not mention the name of Allah. If you have a shower that is separate, like, there's a door, not a curtain, but a door that closes, and so the shower is actually in a separate place, then you can just mention dhikr of Allah. Mm-hmm.
What if you have like an extra bathroom that you never use to go to the bathroom?
Oh, you don't use the toilet?
Like it's an extra bathroom you never use the toilet.
It's niyyah. I mean, it's a bathroom. I don't know. But, the toilet's the toilet. It's kind of a low thing in our culture. So, I mean, obviously the point is the najasa that's in the place. So, if you feel comfortable with it, it's like turkey bacon. If you feel comfortable with it. Yeah, if there's no najasa, it's permitted, I mean, I would maybe put something over it or something. I would just, because somebody could go in there and use it. I mean, you might not use it. Somebody else might use it. What's that?
I would say just a question about heat there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So if you go into a Syrian bathroom, you probably would. Yeah. I mean, they are the cleanest bathrooms, aren't they? Yeah. I would say if Muslims would only keep their public spaces as clean as the private spaces, it's really interesting. Because you go to Muslim countries and like the outside is so dirty, and then you go in the houses and they're so clean, I was with somebody in Morocco, and we were in we were in this zawiya, and these guys were doing dhikr, and they were such a mess, and they all had like half their teeth were falling out, and they all had like yellow teeth, and and their jalabas were a mess, but they were just so full of light, and they were singing these qasaid and things. And when we left, my friend said to me, he said, subhanAllah, you go to like America and everybody's outwardly clean and all their teeth are all brushed, their hair's all, and he said, but they're addicted to this, and they're on Prozac, or they're infidelities to their spouse or what. I mean, he just went on about just the inward states of people. How like these people, he said it was kind of the opposite, outwardly they're just a mess, but inwardly they're like these really pure people, and it was just really accurate description, I thought. What's that? No, I mean, yeah, that's a natural. The heart is. It's like having the Quran in your heart. You don't guard that. And you can make that niyyah, it's just saying the name, because it's you're bringing it out. Yeah. So then wash the right hand up to and including the wrist 3 times, the left hand up to and including the wrist 3 times. Wash the genitals, remove any impurities from the body. Do this with a focused intention to remove the najasa. So you always intend to do that. And then removing a state of greater ritual impurity. So you make the niyyah, fulfillment of an obligation, or rendering worship permissible by removing a preventative. Rinse the mouth 3 times. And again, these are all symbolic. Imam al-Ghazali goes into detail that, it's purifying your mouth from anything that you said that was like backbiting, or anything that was done incorrectly, your eyes from anything you saw, your nose from anything, foul that this is all, and then wash the face thrice, such that the water penetrates the skin beneath all facial hair, that rub the hair rubbed together. Wash the right hand up to and including the elbow thrice, making sure to wash and rub between the fingers. Wash the left hand like the right. Wet the fingertips and massage the scalp from the bottom up before washing the head. Wash the head thrice, Start by pouring water onto the head. So if you have a shower, obviously it's coming down anyway. And work the water into the scalp using fingers, ensuring all the water is wetted and rubbed together. Wash the right ear once. Place water into the right hand. Lean your head like that. So you put the water in the right hand, lean your head so that the water covers the ear. Right? The inside of the ear, and then you go... and behind the ear pinnae, this is the pinnae, and behind the ear. Wash the neck once, wash under the chin, wash the right arm from the shoulder to the elbow once, including the armpit. Wash the front and the back of the right side of the body up to the knee once. Reach all the hidden places of the body between the folds of the right inner thigh, between the buttocks. Wash the left arm from the shoulder to the elbow. So now you do the same thing on the left side. And then wash the right, and then finally washing the feet. So you wash the right foot up to and including the ankle, wash between the toes, starting from the little toe moving to the left, and then washing the left foot up to and including the ankle, same way that you did the right foot. So that's pretty much ghusl. I mean, it's straightforward. I wouldn't obsess about it. You know, it's not... with the water. So you get the water and then go in, and then you just wash over it. Yeah, just making sure that the water penetrates. Yeah, so that you get the water in the scalp. Yeah, and then you wash the water. Like you would do, you know, you wash the water and just do that. But before that, you actually get in to penetrate down. Uh-huh. You have to, yeah, if you have a beard, you have to get in if it's thick. I mean, normally in wudu, you have to do that if you have a light beard. But with ghusl, you have to make sure you get down to the root so that the water penetrates. So that's ghusl. And then the tayammum is earth ablution. The Prophet said, جُعِلَ لِي الْمَشْجِدُ جُعِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ لِي مَشْجِدًا وَالطَّهُورًا. The earth was made as a place of worship for me and a source of purification. And so the tayammum is earth purification. It's in place of water, and it is simply to do the ritual, the lustration, before you pray. So tayammum can be done with anything which is sa'id al-ard, that's on the earth. And it's not a hard thing to do. It's very simple. The Moroccans tend to use rocks to do it, but it's basically you do it. The reasons for performing it are fear of harm. So if there's death, like for instance, one of the Sahaba had a cut on his head in a battle, and then he had a seminal emission that night, and the next day his wound had dried, and the next day he wanted to do tayammum, and the people that were with him said, no, you have to do ghusl, and he said, I'm worried about the wound, and they didn't, and he ended up doing ghusl, and he died because the wound started bleeding again. And when they got back to the Prophet, they told him, and he said, قَتْرَ صَاحِبُهُمْ قَاتَرَهُمْ Allah. You know, they killed their companion, you know, and wronged him greatly. And he said, had they only asked, you know, it was something where they shouldn't have given an opinion because they didn't know, but he was actually right. So the Prophet was very upset about it. And the point of that is that, you know, these things are done as, you know, to make things easy for people. So, in fact, Sheikh Khatri said that he knew the sunnah was practiced in a place when he saw people doing tayammum. Like if you go to South Asia or a lot of Muslim countries, nobody ever does tayammum. The only place I've ever seen tayammum done is Africa. That's the only place I've ever seen it done. Nobody in Pakistan does tayammum. And that's a sign that they're not following the sunnah. Because it's done for a reason. The tayammum was given for a reason. So if you fear loss of limb, increase of illness, somebody who has the flu or somebody who has a bad cold and they're worried about, it's cold out and they're worried about getting pneumonia or getting from doing the water. Or in the dawn period when it's really cold. Like when I was in North Africa, West Africa, during the winter, we were living in tents out, so it was freezing cold. I mean, I always did wudu, but there were a few times where I needed to do ghusl, I did tayammum. Because had I done ghusl in that type of thing, so I was afraid of getting sick from that. So, and then delay in the healing of an illness. An ensuing illness from the use of water, lack of water. So if you don't find water, then it's permissible to do this. So, and then al-Akhdari includes, and this is important too, if the prayer time is about to go out and you will lose the time in doing wudu, so there's water available, but you're going to lose the prayer time is over the water. So you actually do tayammum. So if the sun's about to go down, and you have to go to the bathroom to do wudu, and you're going to lose the asr prayer, then you just do tayammum right where you are. So rules for praying with tayammum: only one obligatory prayer can be performed. So it removes the hadath, but temporarily. It's not like wudu, which removes it until it's broken again. It only removes it temporarily, enough time to do your prayer or recite your Quran or what you're going to do. And then the funeral, sunnah, or nafilah prayers can be performed in conjunction with the obligatory prayer, if it is performed immediately after the obligatory prayer. So you don't do it before, you do it after. So you can do an extra prayer after, but not before. You'd have to do a separate tayammum for the obligatory prayer. It is permissible to perform tayammum for a nafilah independent of the obligatory prayer, for both a sick person and a traveler, but not for the healthy resident. So if you're residing in a place and you're healthy, there's no reason to do tayammum, you don't do it. The healthy resident can perform tayammum from any fard prayer except the Friday congregational prayer, unless he knows he will not find water before the end of the prayer. In such case, one may perform tayammum for the Friday congregational prayer. So, when you're traveling, the healthy resident can perform tayammum for any fard prayer except the Friday congregational prayer, unless he knows he will not find water before the end of the prayer time. So if he'll miss the prayer and he's not going to find water, but otherwise he has to go and do it. In such a case, one may perform tayammum for Jum'ah, if you're going to lose the prayer. No, if you're going to lose the Jummah, the Friday prayer, because the Imam's going to finish. Yeah. Say that he's in the second rakat. And if you know by going and getting your wudu, you're going to miss his, then you can do tayammum. That's why in Morocco, they have the big rocks in the masjid, right? They always have them there, because that's a sunnah to do that. But people don't. In Pakistan, you'll never see a rock in the masjid. Oh, in Hanafi, you can't? Rock is much better.
It shouldn't be prayer time then, it should be the prayer.
What do you mean?
It shouldn't say, unless you will not find water before the end of the prayer time.
I think Jummah is the only exception, right?
Yeah, it is the exception.
Jummah, it's to catch that congregation.
You can put that if you want, if it's not clear to you. It's clear to me, but it might not be clear to some people. So just add it in there. The last rakat of the Imam. Was my I mean, the Jummah prayer time is the prayer, because you're either going to get it or you're not. Huh? Got it? You can put it in there. Come on. It's fine. Look, if you had a hard time with it, somebody else is going to...
Prayer time is the end of Dhuhr.
I know, but not for Jummah. The end of the prayer time is when the Imam finishes the prayer. Yeah. But if it's not clear, you can put it there, because if you with the genius Husseini brain. There's other people that are going to think the same thing. So go ahead. Obligations of tayammum are wiping the face, wiping both hands up to and including the wrists, intention at the first patting of the earth, and that's called darba, which is proof that darb in Arabic means a pat. Right? Like in the Quran, you know, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, like pat them. Yeah. It's not like, that's not how you do tayammum. It's just a, you know, it's like a, it's just a, you know, come on, snap out of it, girl. So wiping the face, wiping both hands up to and including the wrist, intention at the first patting of the earth, and is one of the following. An obligatory tayammum, so it's a fard, or rendering worship permissible, istibaha. If one is in need of ghusl, then one must intend rendering worship permissible from the janaba. So if it's from a ghusl you're doing tayammum, you have to have that niyyah in your heart of removing the janaba. If one is in need of wudu, then rendering worship permissible will suffice. So the first patting of the earth is an obligatory one. The second one's the sunnah. Continuity of action, using pure earth, which includes soil, sand, adobe, stone. So like an adobe house that's not glossed over is permissible. You know, if it's not fired adobe, it has to be the raw earth adobe. If it's painted, you can't. Yeah. And then salt marsh, you know, if you, salt marsh, it's like out where there's salt, you know, in a marsh area they have the salt, the white, you know, that white, that's permitted. But not wood, baked plaster, grass, straw, precious stones, gold or silver. So you can't do it on grass because it has to reach the earth or be from it. So, and then following the tayammum immediately with the prayer. So you shouldn't have a delay between the tayammum and the prayer. And the prayer time having entered, it cannot be performed for a given prayer until the time of that prayer has entered. So it has to be in the prayer time. You don't do it before the tayammum and then wait till the time comes in. And then Khalil adds, removing any barriers between earth and skin, such as ring, bracelets, and watches. So if you have a ring, you take it off. Whereas in the ghusl, you don't have to take it off. You just move it enough to, right? And in wudu, you just have to turn it. And then the sunan, wiping the arm up to and including the elbow. So the fard is just up to the wrist, sunnah up to the elbow. And then patting the earth a second time for the hands, and then following the sequential order. Its recommended acts are saying Bismillah at the outset, and then the meritorious quality, which is in the footnote there, Wasfun Hamid. We don't have the... in the absence of water, performing tayammum. So, in the absence of water, performing the tayammum at the end of the prayer time if one hopes to find water before then. So that's called the raji. So if you're a raji, if you think you're probably going to get water, you should wait till the last prayer time. The middle of the prayer time, if one wavers between finding water or not. The ulama differentiate between what's called dhan, shak, and waham. Dhan is shak is where doubt, where it's completely equal. Whether something's going to happen or not happen, it's balanced. So if you're in doubt, you just don't know. So you think, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Then you wait till the middle. That's what he's saying there, if you're in the state of doubt. If you're in a state of dhan, you know, the scale is that you'll probably find water, you wait till the end time. If you're in the state of waham, which is you don't think you'll find it, then you do it at the beginning of the prayer time.
What lengths are you expected to go to find water? Like, I mean,
they say, yeah, that's a good point. They say, you know, walking like a mile. You know, it's reasonable. then facing Qibla and brushing one's teeth. So the siwak also. I mean, that's Khalil adds that. So you face Qibla, and then also additions from Khalil. The following are discouraged acts of tayammum. Excessiveness, like hitting the earth hard, or like rubbing the soil in there. It's a ritual. There's, you have to really see it as a ritual. It's in place of wudu to create a kind of, just a psychological state that prepares you for getting into the prayer. So there shouldn't be any ghulu. And then repetition, you shouldn't do it like 3 times like you do wudu. Well, wudu 3 times must be good, so let's do it 3 times. And then speaking during tayammum other than resemblance. And then it's nullified by that which nullifies wudu, the availability of purifying water before one prays, and there's enough time to perform the water ritual or catch the prayer on time. If water is found after performing the prayer, but before its time elapses, in this case, it is recommended for one to perform wudu and repeat that prayer in the time of one's state when performing tayammum was one of the following. Fearful of a bandit, so if you're afraid of being robbed or something like that, hopeful of finding water, but nevertheless proceeds to pray during the beginning of the time, even though one is expected to wait until the end of the time, or a chronically ill person who lacked an assistant to fetch water. So if water is found after performing the prayer, but before the time elapses, it is recommended for one to perform wudu and repeat the prayer in the time if one's state when performing tayammum was one of the following. So those are the reasons that it would be, you should repeat the prayer. And then if a significant time elapses after the performance of tayammum with no devotional action that requires ritual purification having been performed, a significant amount of time is the length of time it takes for the limbs of wudu to dry if they were wet in the moderate weather. Its order is saying Bismillah from an intention in the heart while patting the pure earth using one of the following: obligatory tayammum, rendering worship permissible, and then rendering worship from greater ritual impurity, janaba if it was. Patting the pure earth with the hands, wiping the face once, starting with the hairline down to the bottom of the chin. Patting the pure earth a second time, wiping the arm. So I'll just show you. If this was earth, you face the Qibla, and then you just make a tap, and then you take off the ring. You make a tap, and then you do that to get the dust off, all right? So you tap like that, and then you start up here, and then come like that, all right? So that's the face. And then one time, and then tap, and then go down like that to the elbow, and then up like that, and then in between the, and then down like that, and then like that. So that's tayammum. If you do it with a rock, what's that? Oh, yeah. Then you just cover the hand with the rock. That's kind of a small rock, but you could do it with that. So you just cover the hand with the rock like that. You don't do a tap. And then same thing. Okay, and then the second time. So, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, the earth was made a source of purification for my ummah. So it's just, this is earth purification as opposed to water.